We'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome to our community development public hearing. It is August 10th, 2023. The time is 6:01 p.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. And I have some opening remarks, so please bear with me today. Code of Conduct. All public comment and testimony will be civil and respectful, address the Board of County Commissioners and not the audience, address issues and not persons, refrain from applause as it interferes with due process. Do raise your hands if you are in agreement with the speaker. When asked by a commissioner to stop, please do so promptly or face being asked to leave the meeting. If repeated requests by a commissioner are disregarded, the meeting will be recessed or adjourned depending on the issue at hand. And then I want to make a comment about quasi-judicial versus legislative matters, because we have one of each on the agenda tonight. Our ORA, which is an ordinance change, is a legislative matter, and that's handled a little bit differently. We're not necessarily bound by the same laws we are on a quasi-judicial thing. We're able to talk to people outside of a public hearing. On the quasi-judicial one, which is the major subdivision for Lakestone Estates, that one we can only regard material that is presented to us in an open meeting in a hearing. Okay, so it's a little bit different, and the way we handle it is going to be a little bit different. So with that, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will poll for conflicts of interest.
None.
None. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get started with our public hearing. ORA 23-0001. This is the LUDC amendment regarding code enforcement, and that's Land Use and Development Code. And I think we will start with Director Callahan.
Thank you, Chair Duncan. Good evening, Commissioners and everyone in the audience. The item before you really comes down to two basic elements that we are asking to change in the code. One is how we notice people, and the other has to do with the ability for the director, in this case me, to be able to levy fines under certain circumstances. The reason or rationale for changing the notice, we currently notice everything that's for instance, a violation of code through not the U.S. mail, but certified mail process. That, of course, costs money, but it actually is counterproductive at times. And if there's anyone on Zoom, please mute yourself now. It's not staff. But back to the point, it's actually kind of counterproductive, we found, to do a first notice through certified mail, because some people look at the certification and trash it, I hate to say, or don't accept it, I mean. And so not only are we spending money, but we're not being effective. And so this first component really just gives us the option of doing regular U.S. mail for the first notice, which is a warning letter anyway, and then we'll follow up with certified mail for the actual notice of violation and any other subsequent things like that. So it's really hopefully just an exercise in streamlining and reducing cost.
Okay.
Any questions on that part?
Questions?
No.
Thank you. The more difficult part of this, I'll say it's difficult for me, is it has to do with trying to get compliance. I have noticed in my nearly 10 years here that it's pretty common for people to do things that violate law with impunity, because there aren't many, well, there are almost no ramifications. The worst that happens is we do a notice a violation against the property records, and under certain circumstances, we have gone on to sue in court, and we usually win in those cases. That's not my concern. My concern is that we get numerous cases of, for instance, people taking out all of the vegetation on a lot that's on the lake. That's a violation of code. But once it's done, if you'll pardon the phrase, you can't unchisel that stone. I mean, even if we get them to remediate, it can be 10, 15 years before the vegetation comes back. So I came up with the idea and ran it by Pat and then took it to Plan Commission of actually allowing the director to impose a fine immediately once we know that there's a bona fide violation, with the logic that it would get people's attention, especially if it starts to mount up with multiple days. And that once word gets out that we're serious about enforcing our codes, that we would start to have more compliance. So it's really as simple as that. There are all sorts of permutations we could go into if you'd like. There are members in the audience I know that are here supporting this and would be willing to speak to it if you'd like. That's it in a nutshell, except to mention that the Plan Commission heard this item on May 25th and voted unanimously to approve it.
And were all members present?
Yes, on that day.
Okay, thank you. All right, questions?
Yeah, the only question I have is I've known David for almost 5 years now and know him to be very fair, and he goes out of his way. So I don't have a problem with him having some authority to levy fines. But what happens when you leave and we get some Simon Legree in there ready to? What do we do? What do we do then?
You have two options.
Okay.
You can fire Simon, or you can change the code,
Okay,
or both.
that's my only real concern there.
Yes, sir.
Actually, there's a third option.
Oh,
And that one is actually already in the code and would not change, is that that determination can be appealed
Appealed.
to the board, and through the hearing examiner process, and
Thank you,
then
Pat.
that can be, those could be, changed, reduced or stricken at that point.
So in that way, the fine is just like anything else my department does or any determination we make. Everything can be appealed.
okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, you brought up the example of someone who clears out all the vegetation on a lot by the lake, and then after the fact discovers, let's say, they were violating the code. So how would this ordinance apply in that situation? Because let's say the person wasn't aware, not that that's necessarily.
I wouldn't typically apply it in that case. The cases I've known about are ones where they knew it was a violation and they did it anyway.
Yeah.
And we knew they knew.
So it's typically for issues that go over a much longer period of time.
And are egregious.
Yeah.
And willful.
I'll piggyback on Commissioner Brooks' statement. I hope you know me well enough by now to know that I take work very seriously and do everything I can to try and resolve matters without using a heavy hand.
Yeah.
But there are times when we need to be able to step in with authority.
And I understand, and the part that I just want to make sure that if we go down this road, that we avoid an arbitrary nature for how these fines are applied, because without some standard, I mean, notice is certainly one of the standards. You open the door to that, and not you specifically, but your position does.
Yeah, there's one other, Pat Braden, Civil Deputy Prosecutor again. There is one other provision that's already in the code, and again, wouldn't be changed, that could apply in that instance too. And
You're looking for it.
yeah, I'm looking, okay, I found it. It's 81201 subsection D, and it refers back to all the maze that are in in 88601 and 88603. Excuse me. The word may is permissive and indicates the ability to exercise sound discretion. Sound discretion involves the following. 1, recognizing a matter as discretionary. 2, acting within the outer boundaries of that discretion and consistently with any legal standards applicable to specific choices. Those specific choices being in Title 8, Chapter 8 in this case. And 3, reaching a decision through an exercise of reason. So there are the discretion the director would have in these or any other land use regulations where the word may is used. There are sideboards set on it. It's the same sideboards that the courts use to determine whether, a discretionary decision is sound or not.
Does it help typically to have some sort of documentation that explains that rationale?
Yes.
So that would probably be a good practice, at least for the community development director to engage in.
And that one is something David does do already, whether it's a, hard copy document or even in an email.
Sure, okay.
So,
Thank you.
So typically now, you would bring something before the board when it's egregious, because typically it's going to involve the attorney and potentially court. Is there a big reason why you wouldn't let the board know before you took this kind of action?
If it's your pleasure, I could bring every one of these to you before I pull the trigger, if you'll pardon the phrase.
Just a thought. And then we think that this will solve some of these egregious issues?
I believe it has the potential. It's one of those things I don't know until we try.
Okay.
But I can tell you, I've been through a great many instances now, and sometimes with repeat offenders, where they know they're doing the wrong thing, they do it anyway because there's no real consequence.
Well, the consequence is eventually we take them to district court,
Ultimately.
ultimately. Okay.
Another question, what happens if people don't pay?
Pat deals with that.
we can take, then we could bring that action in district court and seek an order compelling payment of those previously imposed penalties. That's actually at least on page 3 that I have in 88603, the subsection that's currently C that would become D.
Right.
All right.
Madam Chair, I did
Yes.
forget to mention that at the Plan Commission, we went over, and you have in your packet what's on the screen, which is the staff analysis that's required for these kinds of code amendments. So I just want to make it clear that we've done what's required by law to get this properly in front of you. It's in the PDF, the
Exhibits?
exhibits, hearing exhibit sheet.
Okay.
It's got all the exhibits plus everything that was in front of the Plan Commission, including the ordinance and this document that I've got on the screen here.
Oh, there's the analysis, page 20. Okay. Great. And I did want to mention that typically the board likes to deliberate separately than the public hearing. So we'd like some time to digest the material heard tonight, and then we will schedule it for a date certain when the public hearing portion's over. Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So I will start with folks in favor of the ordinance change, and we'll kind of go back and forth, although that won't last very long because we only have a couple against it. So I'm going to start with Mr. Helmuth von Elke. Oh, it's Von and Elke Helmuth, sorry. could not be here today, but they have submitted a written comment that they would like read into the record. Is that okay, Pat?
Yes.
Okay. And sorry, it is a little bit long, but we'll get through it. I'll skip to, we as concerned citizens see constant flagrant violations in our neighborhood. They include illegal structures, and this is regarding Bonanza Ranch. Illegal activities such as drug trafficking and vehicular traffic to known drug houses, lack of proper sanitary systems, harassment of and threats towards complainants, violations of streamside protection zones and other best management practices, illegal shipping containers, illegal residency, trash buildup, and rats. Junker vehicles and other illegal storage, illegal cut and fill, lack of site disturbance plans, purposeful errors and omissions on proposals submitted for county approval. Now granted, some of the above may be more under the purview of other agencies, but overall decay and decline are allowed due to lack of meaningful enforcement actions, only serves to further the overall problems faced by many property owners. The county investigates, but at best can enact minimal fines that are ignored. Our enforcement folks do what they can, but unfortunately are hamstrung by a lack of meaningful enforcement tools to effect compliance. Local violators brag they will let any unpaid fines become liens against a property and are of little importance. Bonanza Ranch has been ignored for too many years, including meaningful code enforcement. We wholeheartedly support enactment of new fee penalty for noncompliance. To be effective, penalties need to be of sufficient magnitude to make potential violators think twice before willing to violate code or not mitigating code violations brought to their attention, and fines should be payable in short order. Unfortunately, we could not be present tonight, hence this statement. Please make it part of the record. Thank you for the opportunity to present our concerns. We certainly hope you'll take time to tour our community and see what we are up against. So there's that. And then I will continue with Mr. Lauren Scarcello, opposed, wishes to speak.
Good evening, I'm Lauren Scarcello. I reside at North 22389 Kevin Road, Rathdrum. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Kootenai Farm Bureau Board. This was a topic of our meeting, one of our topics in our meeting just today. We intended to have a letter to.
Is your mic on?
No, it is.
There you go. Should I start over or are we golden?
I think we're okay.
Okay. It's pretty brief anyway here, guys. Anyway, we are against any change in the current policies or ordinance. I would like to state also that we do not condone poor behavior or bad actors in the building trade, but simply put, we feel the current laws and policies are sufficient. We also have concerns as to how much authority is granted to non-elected department heads and or the possibility of growing government. As we view this, it's kind of a triple whammy of enforcement. It seemed a little bit to us like overreach. Maybe there's something we need to learn on our end. But I would like to say that the Kootenai Farm Bureau represents 3,650 members in our area. That's about it. We're available for comments or questions. You guys have my number. And being as how I'm a model of efficiency, I do have a couple letters on another topic I could leave. Is that acceptable?
On another topic, yeah, you could,
Circle back with your staff.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, submit it to the,
Hate to start off your
BOCC
meeting with a
staff.
big glitch here, guys.
yeah.
Anyway, thank you for your time.
Yes, and we actually, Sarah Masters right here would accept those for you. Thank you. All right, we will go with, in favor, wishes to speak, Jan Wilkins.
Good evening. My name is Jan Wilkins. I am residing at 12979 North Knox Drive in Hayden. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. I am speaking on behalf of the Hayden Lake Watershed Association. In May, we had an enforcement workshop, and we invited lot of, every key figure that we could think of in regards to code enforcement. And I'd like to leave you tonight with the notes of that meeting. We covered a whole range that was a whole day workshop. And we, in relation to what we're discussing tonight, I would like to say that we as an organization and a community strongly support the increased fee structure. In all due respect to the man who previously testified, if they were following the rules, this wouldn't be necessary. And I do believe that a majority of the contractors understand good erosion control methods and adhere to them and adhere to the plans that they submit and get approved. Unfortunately, there are some very bad actors that are the minority, but they are repeated bad actors. And in the case of our lake, which is what I know specifically, they have put literally tons of sediment into the lake, which is irreparable harm. It won't be fixed in the short term or the long term. So what we would like to do is not only support this effort, but think that there should be actually no limit to the fees until these conditions are corrected, that they shouldn't max out. And that specifically, these fees should apply to the owners of the property. What we find is that the builders, if they are knowingly violating code, continue to violate and then go in to beg forgiveness when it comes to the time of the CO being issued. That's a pattern. If the owners are involved, if the owners are being penalized, we feel that they will be more likely to urge their contractors to comply. Unless it's painful, contractors are going to be continuing to ignore red tags. So far, it's not painful. We believe that severe and repeated violations need to be heard in district court, not municipal court. And through this method, they will be heard in district court. If they don't pay, then they will be going to district court. We also believe, and I don't believe that this is part of it, but I think that a friendly amendment would be that if possible, at the time of application, the contractor would agree that in the event of legal proceedings, which he, if he would lose those legal proceedings, then he would be liable for the legal fees incurred by the county in order to enforce compliance. And that would be something he would agree to in advance, getting in the process of getting his application. That was one of the ideas that came out of our meeting. So I know that there are other people here tonight that that have other things to say. What I would like to do is leave you with these notes from our meeting that cover far more than just this issue of penalties. And I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those notes will be entered as B1001.
I would ask that people who bring papers up be mindful that when they pull them across the microphone, it makes it very difficult to hear what you're saying. So those mics are very, very sensitive.
All right, now we have Pat Miller, who is opposed and wishes to speak.
Excuse me, thank you. I'm Pat Miller. I'm the Vice President of the Twin Lakes Improvement Association. Our organization is opposed to the unrestricted fine language now proposed by the amendment 88603B. Our concern is the very nature of an unrestricted language. Some of the questions posed by the board so far have addressed that. Among other things, we think that it creates even an inconsistency within your own code. For example, 88601D gives the right for 45 days to remediate following a notice of violation. The language now proposed under 88603B for the fine would seem to either imply that that's a revoked provision or somehow that that's going to be imposed in that. While there's a promise by the director that he will use the good judgment, we think that the language of the ordinance, if fines are to be imposed, needs to include conditions under which fines can be imposed, when they can be imposed, the circumstances, and the amounts. The language of the proposed amendment even includes a reference that the board can later set a fee schedule. Well, that seems to imply the deferment to the bureaucracy of the county to do that which the board wants to do, that is to impose fines. So if fines are appropriate, we think that there have to be conditions, there should be conditions, circumstances, restrictions, does or doesn't apply during that initial 45 days. Is that intended as a direct revocation of the remediation period, or is that an implied revocation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Larry, is it Lucky? Okay, and in favor wishes to speak.
My name is Larry Lucky. I live at 6637 East Little Joe Road in Coeur d'Alene. We have, laws exist for a reason. We have the codes. You have to be able to enforce that code. If you don't enforce that code, you're going to have situations where people ignore it. They ignore it on purpose. They ignore it blatantly. We've got guys in our neighborhood that have had fines for 12 years. I'll take a quick tangent from that and address the lakes. We all like to believe we have beautiful lakes here. We don't. Our lakes are a disaster. If you're a scuba diver, you'll find cinder blocks, sheetrock, 2x4s, pieces of plywood and sheathing, roofing, thousands of beer bottles, golf balls, beer cans, everything else. That's in Twin Lakes, Coeur d'Alene Lake, Spirit Lake, Pend Oreille. Oil filters. That row of housing that's on the Pend Oreille Lake that we all like to think is so beautiful, there's 150 different oil filters down there that are filled with oil. I pulled out 2 motors myself, or helped do it. Probably 6 or 7 tires. We don't have clean water. If we can enforce the laws that we have, that might actually stop people from doing that. When it comes to Bonanza Ranch, we have got illegal houses. We have got guys that have, like I said, multiple fines with zero regard for you guys or code enforcement. Dave has been absolutely crippled. He's cut off at the knees. He's worded everything very eloquently and very politely. What his officers get is FU. Multiple times for years on end. It has not changed. It will not change until they get enforced. We had a meeting with building enforcement or building commissioners before. Some of us gave very passionate talks about the frustration level that we have there. I specifically referenced 4 people with him. I made the comment that we might make national news if you guys don't give him the ability to enforce the law as it's written. That's all we're asking for. I called one time, I was talking to a guy and I said, you tell me where the threshold is. If we're not going to enforce these laws, where do we go? Do I beat him? Hammer? Gun? What's next? Where do we go from here? I discussed 4 different people. Since that time, one of them still dumps his feces and his piss all over the yard. He's had multiple interactions with the police department. He's had a dog taken from him because it killed another dog at the city park. He's made threats of murdering one man and raping his wife, who may or may not be willing to talk tonight. And that doesn't win the prize. The prize is 2 weeks after I spoke to you guys last time. One of the other 4, 2 out of those 4 people, was a guy confronted him about him going through the dumpsters, and his response was to pull a gun and start shooting at him. That's what we have in our neighborhood right now. We have people living in campers illegally that are dumping their water on the ground. And when code enforcement comes, it is, quote, as told to me, if you want to come to my property, you better be wearing a jacket because I've got an AR and I'm waiting for you.
Sir,
That's getting out of hand.
sure, your time is up. Thank you.
Okay?
Jason Hegstadt, in favor, wishes to speak.
Thank you. Some of the things you'll probably hear multiple times tonight about certain conditions. I also live in Bonanza Ranch. I'm at 6630 East Little Joe Road
David?
in Coeur d'Alene. One of the main issues we have that is fairly blatant but universal in the neighborhood are people that living in RVs year-round, which is against the code. A lot of those are rentals, which is also not allowed. And as was mentioned earlier, they also do have an issue with never taking them to dump. And so the waste remains on the property year-round, year after year. So the RVs are allowed as intermittent use, but many of the properties are not there intermittently, they're there full-time. And in addition to kind of the waste issues, there are a lot of the properties have a lot of outside storage or clutter or garbage everywhere as well. Some of those properties have been asked to clean up the mess. One in particular, over 10 years ago, had a court order to clean up. Still a huge mess. That particular property has multiple non-working vehicles alongside the road that are blocking a portion of the road. Recently, code enforcement, along with other agencies, were able to get those stickered and towed. 2 days later, they were back. There's not a way really to enforce the rules with the current setup. So for these properties with multiple non-working vehicles, for these properties with all the garbage and outside storage that isn't allowed, they really aren't required to make any change. Because potentially they get a $300 fine that they can tack onto their property for a future sale, or maybe they never move and it's never an issue. But that's really the extent of what's been happening for the most cases. You know, if someone has a $300 fine on their property for 10 years plus and doesn't ever want to pay it, they don't have to. There's no real ramifications. So. Many of the offenses require more than one agency to respond. So whether it's the sheriff's office, highway department, fire department, panhandle health, code enforcement, sometimes they've got to work together on some of these issues. A lot of the things that code enforcement should be able to do related to the properties, they just aren't able to. And some of the other agencies don't have the authority in that area to be able to do. So for example, the wastewater, whether it's black water or brown water dumping on the ground, that's really a panhandle health issue. But if the person wasn't allowed to live in that non-legal structure, it wouldn't have to be a panhandle issue because code enforcement could have already done something about it. We have a gentleman living in the neighborhood who built a shed. He proposed it as a shed, built it as a shed. It's really a tiny house where he lives in the property full time. And this is
Sorry.
multiple issues that you can kind of start to see the picture.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Will Neal, in favor, wishes to speak.
I'm Will Neal. I live at 4686 East Upper Hayden Lake Road, Hayden Lake. I'm here to, I had a really nice speech to give, but I think that I just want to express to you how often in our neighborhood around the lake we have seen actors, we've seen contractors who will repeatedly commit the same act. No BMPs or improperly placed BMPs, all things that are fairly easy and well known among the industry, not in place. I've seen some of these actors, some of these contractors, where they will be red tagged they'll simply take the red tag out, set it off to the side, and continue work. There's no regard for any penalty currently that they might experience from their actions. That's why I support the notion of having the fines that can be at the direction of the director to get, and I think as it's stated right now, there is a limit to how much that is. And as a starting point, we need to get their attention. If there is a crime that is committed, we as a conservative and civil society expect that there will be some penalty that they will suffer if they continue to behave in that way. And that's what we are simply asking, is that there is a problem. It is not a majority of contractors that we see out there that are committing these violations, but they are the ones who really need to feel the sting of their actions. So, having said that, thank you very much.
Gil Rosner Jr. in favor, wishes to speak.
Well, unlike Will, I got to work from notes. My name is Gil Rosner Jr. I live at 15473 North Sportsman Park Road on Hayden Lake. Mailing address is Hayden Lake, Idaho. My residence is on the waterfront on Hayden Lake, and I frequently tour Hayden Lake by boat. I'm also on various other Kootenai County waterways, including specifically Coeur d'Alene Lake during the 107-day waterfowl season. So I'm on the water a lot, and I'm looking at waterfront development a lot. I've witnessed quite a bit of development of parcels, waterfront parcels on these bodies of water, especially in more recent years. The work includes site disturbance. When projects are properly designed and executed, the ecology of the lakes that these parcels front is maintained, but when not properly designed or executed, or when best practices for such work are not put in place, many times in the case of non-permitted work or unpermitted work, the result is surface runoff of phosphorus-bearing silt into the lake. Best practices such as silt fence, straw wattles, swales, landscape design, leaving a barrier of vegetation in place are being ignored. I'm in favor of strict economic penalties being put in place and enforced for those who do not follow Kootenai County's site disturbance and permitting policy. The fines should be an amount that provide a meaningful deterrent to such conduct and not be a paltry sum that could simply be included as a cost of doing business. These fines should be leveled against property owners rather than their building contractors or subcontractors. I think it's too easy on a contractor doing $1 million custom home build to hide $25,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 in fines and just bill it and kind of tuck it into the cost of doing business. Property owners should know that the actions of their contractors are causing them a direct financial loss. It's through the development of a fine structure along with consistent enforcement of the permitting process that contractors and property owners might be more successfully deterred from bad behavior affecting the ecological health of our shorelines and waterways. With that, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Ross Wilkins in favor, wishes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Ross Wilkins, and I live on Knox Drive in Hayden. So, we have laws and regulations. You have laws and regulations that, if broken, injure the public and degrade the environment. Without any ability to enforce those, the obvious happens. We can't ignore that. Ask the people in downtown Portland and downtown Seattle what happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danny Peterson, in favor, may wish to speak.
Hello, my name is Danny Peterson. I live on Reagan Drive in the Bonanza Ranch area, and highly in favor of this. As a matter of fact, I don't feel that it goes far enough. We should put more teeth in it after the fact. If they can't or don't pay the fine, some kind of a lien against their property, I have no problem with that. So I'm highly in favor of this, and thank you for the enforcement.
Thank you. Jeff Sparks, in favor, may wish to speak.
I live in the same area, Bonanza Ranch, on Reagan Drive. I'm also in favor of this, and it kind of goes back to a lot of the things that have been said today, is we have to have a way to enforce these laws. You know, every evening when I go outside, I hear a generator of an RV that lives there permanently, that has skirted the outside of his RV, has no indication of any sort of facility to take care of human waste. And I think it's promoting more RVs to buy these small lots and do the exact same thing. It's becoming, well, wow, it's a great, easy, cheap way to live, and it's encouraging more and more of that. So again, I'm in favor of allowing David and his team to help us take action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Melanie Esau, in favor, does not wish to speak. And so if you do not wish to speak, but you've changed your mind, please raise your hand. Arlie Esau, in favor, does not wish to speak. Matt, oh boy, I'm going to butcher this one. Aparicio? Okay, in favor, does not wish to speak. Leroy Thompson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Okay, anybody who wishes to speak who did not sign up? Oh, okay. Yes, anybody on Zoom now?
If there's anyone on Zoom that would like to speak to this issue, please unmute yourself and announce your name and go ahead.
Peter Slaney, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Peter Slaney. My wife and I, Dia, live on Cartwright Road in the Bonanza Ranch area. I completely and totally approve and agree with this situation of imposing fines. I do agree with other people saying that they have to be enforced. There's been enough whack-a-mole games of people doing things up there and not being held accountable. We're real estate investors on private sector sides, and in Spokane County, when people continue to do violations, have drug, alcohol issues, multiple police calls to their homes, and do not pay their violations, those homes are abated, and they are kicked out, and they're sold. And that's something else I think should be imposed. If we're in a world anymore, unless people are actually held accountable, really held to the fire, they are not going to do anything. They're going to continue to, as like Larry said, tell our county commissioners, F you. And they're going to continue to push the effort until we and also our county commissioners stand behind us and our community and really hold these people accountable. If you're not going to be accountable, this is what's going to happen to you. Period. End of story. It is clear. You're fined. You got 45 days to clean it up. You've got these fines even after you clean it up. You don't remove the fines. You have to pay those as well. If you don't pay them, your house will be abated. Period. End of story. This is what's going to change the behaviors of these people to take advantage of certain situations. Larry mentioned the guy that threatened to get effed up by a neighbor and his wife raped. That was me. And I will bring you a stack of police calls, noise complaints, threats on Paul Perez, who lives right across from me. He lives in an illegal shed. He built it under 200 square feet, but he also has a loft where his bedroom is. He should be over 200 square feet because that loft should be considered livable space. The other guy to the west of me that Jeff just mentioned, Larry Kinsella, he's been living in a shed. He has a wooden box room attached to his shed, and he's let bushes grow all over it, and he's living in it for a long time. I've been up there for about 6 years now, and he's been that way since. Where does the feces go? I've been documenting Paul Perez's house for months. He hand dug a septic pit on the side of his house, which drains into a creek that comes through my property. He ran illegal extension cords up to the grasses into somebody else's power line, creating a fire hazard. Those things have been dealt with, but I know he has violations against him now for a variety of other things. He's a known drug addict. He's a known alcoholic. He's a known abuser. He now has a violent dog that is listed with the county as a vicious and violent dog and is still an impound. Apparently they're going to let him have it back, but if you drive there by now, he's building a big kennel to have that dog live in. And that dog must be muzzled
Sir.
all the time.
Thank
It is in his
you for
house
your
or
comments,
in
sir.
there.
The time is up now, but thank you for your comments.
Please enforce.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak at this time?
Yes, please. This is Mary Ann Stoll. My address is 1327 East Pennsylvania Avenue in Coeur d'Alene. I know that we would like to believe that when people understand the law, that they are willing to comply.
Okay.
But I think that we have voluminous evidence of cases where that isn't true. People understand the law in Bonanza Ranch. Contractors around Hayden Lake understand the law, and they fail to comply. I know that we have an escalation process that runs from notification through litigation, but litigation is almost never sought. I have observed over the last 5 years that many cases start with red tagging, and they basically end at red tagging without compliance. And so I want to offer my support for this particular amendment and for the enforcement office to start at a higher level of notification with the fee that can be imposed. And I also want to encourage this board to allow that escalation process to move to fulfillment as often as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else, David?
Anyone else on Zoom? Apparently not.
Okay. So then, is it appropriate for you to give rebuttal?
Not really rebuttal per se, but I know Pat has a comment.
Just a couple of points in response to some comments. I'm always happy to have another attorney review my work, because sometimes I may miss something, or something may be worded better, or something. Mr. Miller, Pat Miller, indicated that the civil penalties could be read to be inconsistent with the cure period of 45 days. I think the way to fix that would be to say a director may impose a civil penalty for a recorded violation, etc. To provide that the civil penalty would not be imposed until after the violation has been recorded, which happens after the cure period and after the appeal period for the underlying violation. They would still have the ability to appeal the imposition of the penalties, but the appeal period for the substantive violation would have passed. Another thing, proposed D at the request, I don't know if you have this part with you or not, but at the suggestion of the Planning Commission, I did put in a provision where costs and attorney's fees can be sought by the prevailing party in district court. That provides that much further incentive to comply, and it also provides an incentive to county not to engage in this action, these actions frivolously as well. That's why it says either party may seek costs or attorney's fees at that level. Thirdly, there's the provision that allows the county to seek an order in district court to compel payment of a civil penalty. Should the judge agree and enter a judgment compelling that payment, once that's recorded, that does become a lien against the property, and we would have the right to foreclose upon it if those are not paid. So that's the abatement that the one gentleman spoke of.
So we have that available to us right now, or only when we,
That would be part of the amendment.
okay, and then at what point? I mean, if they have a $1,000 violation that's put on their lien, we would abate for $1,000?
Not necessarily, we just have the ability to. Now, if it was $20,000, we might be talking real money, and that might be an incentive, or, if the property's sold, it could get paid at that time. Like we've had, on county assistance liens, which I know you guys are familiar with.
Right, so I'm just trying to figure, say it's a $3 million home, there's a $20,000 lien on it, and we would consider abating that?
We would have the ability to. I think, certainly discretion is in order in terms of when to actually exercise that, that legal right.
Go ahead.
I think in a situation like that, we would be looking at a continued public nuisance
Yes.
versus a cured situation that has an
yeah.
outstanding balance.
Yes, I would concur with that.
So maybe that could be amended in some way?
Well, we already have provisions in the code regarding nuisance, so.
I mean, for abatement,
Right here.
in order to initiate abatement. Because
As a standard?
Yeah,
well,
I mean.
yeah, because abatement really is the next step if you impose the fines, and the public nuisance has not been resolved at that point. I mean,
Yeah,
it's an
I
escalation
can
as
add
opposed
that.
to an option.
Yeah, that can be added.
Okay.
So let's say that this is passed 1 week from now, August 17th. How many are we talking about right now would
Oh.
we be imposing fines on at $1,000
I don't have a
day?
list, if that's your point.
Okay.
There's not any that are on the queue waiting for me or waiting for this.
And to be honest, Commissioners, I'm not sure that we would be able to impose fines on any violation that's been imposed up to the date that this takes effect. It would be only on those.
Future violations?
We'd have,
Okay,
we'd have a little due process issue if we started doing that.
so grandfathered
Unfortunately for the owners in
violations.
Bonanza Ranch, but, certainly for future violations, that would be an option.
Okay. So talking about some of the violations we heard in Bonanza Ranch, do we actually believe it will change behavior with a $1,000 fine a day?
That sounds like a rhetorical question to me.
That's fine. You don't have to answer.
To me, it just adds extra incentive to try to comply. It's like paying interest and penalties on your income taxes, or if you get behind on your property taxes. Part of the reason those are imposed is to compel compliance, and preferably to get that taken care of before those start accruing.
It sounds like this is more of an escalation procedure with teeth as opposed to necessarily, I mean, obviously you want to incent people to comply.
Right.
But for those that aren't, it is an escalation procedure with teeth in order to rid the community of that public nuisance, in essence.
Agreed, and if I may, Chair Duncan?
Yes, please.
To try and answer your question, I really see this as a messaging attempt, where once we do this a few times, it'll travel quickly throughout the community, is my guess. And those people that have a conscience will pay attention. There will always be those people that are irreconcilably opposed the law.
Is it good people don't need laws and bad people don't follow them?
No comment.
Well, you need teeth with your laws to at least discourage it, or try.
I'm just actually asking for another tool in the toolbox.
Okay.
Just basically to try to uphold the rule of law instead of the rule of the law of the jungle.
Just want to make sure the tool does not inflict permanent damage and is,
Absolutely.
used properly. So,
Yeah, that's one of the balances you kind of consider anytime you consider, passing a law.
okay. Are we still wanting to deliberate next week? I would probably prefer it.
If you would, that's fine, yeah.
Okay.
We can
Are
wait.
you good are you good to deliberate next week?
Sure.
Okay. So,
And I'll have a
A clean draft.
updated.
an updated clean draft with the two,
Fixes.
just the two revisions that we've discussed.
Okay. All right. Before I close public testimony, anybody change their mind? Okay, I would take a motion.
I move that we end public testimony on ORA 23-0001 LUDC amendment regarding code enforcement.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Matari,
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye, and we will have deliberations on August 17th and 9 a.m. Thank you. Okay, does anybody need a break? You want a break?
I do for 5 minutes.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back for Lakestone Estates. Much for being patient. Note of that. All right, so we are now going to hear a very specific topic for MSP 22-0004 Lakestone Estates. This hearing is limited to the new information submitted by Lakes Highway District, and I will go ahead and turn it over to Director Callahan to give us a little bit of background.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening again, everyone. We are here tonight on this item for the singular reason that the condition you imposed on the approval of this subdivision is unacceptable to Lakes Highway District. That was the gating of the public road. They have that authority, and it's their call, not ours. That being the case, we need you to rethink this one because your approval was effectively a denial, if you will. And the applicant and their consultants have come up with a new idea that you can't have considered, and you can only consider it through this public hearing process. Because as Chair Duncan mentioned in the beginning, this is a quasi-judicial process, and in order to have due process of law, we need to reopen the hearing, allow the new information to be introduced, and then you can make a new decision. The thing that's really before you that's new tonight and is on the screen to your left is the highway district's now agreeable to a one-way road of the southern portion of this subdivision. That would limit as you see the red arrow on the left side, that would limit the direction of travel and reduce some of the infiltration of traffic into the neighborhood and city to the south and east. So it would seem that that might be useful in some ways. That said, there are a number of people here that would like to speak to that issue, and I won't put words in their mouth.
Okay, thank you. And then I will start with the applicant who gets 20 minutes in this case. And so, you didn't fill out one of these, right?
I did.
Gordon?
I am.
Okay, you didn't mark applicant representative.
I didn't?
I'll mark that for you. Mr. Dobler, please go ahead.
Thank you. Gordon Dobler, Dobler Engineering, P.O. Box 3181 Hayden Avenue. Thank you. Are we ready with my assistant, Vlad, will now. Let me just kind of set the tone. We find ourselves in an interesting predicament here with the issue of First Street in that it's really not a direct impact of our subdivision. It's more a result of obviously a condition that Lakes Highway District has put on this subdivision and on previous subdivisions too. So, which one? Okay. That's a razor. Okay.
This is good.
So I'd like to address an overall picture before we get to the specifics of the one-way and the direction of it. So let's look at the traffic patterns and traffic characteristics of Bayview. This is an overall of the road network in Bayview. And I think what jumps out at us is that it's really a looped road. It's not a through. Bayview is a destination. So you're going or coming from Bayview. You don't swing through Bayview on your way to Sandpoint. You have a reason to go there. You live there, or you have Marina. Let's look at that. Let's see. Hopefully I get the right direction. Okay, these are the main roads. Let me see if this laser works. This is perimeter, comes around, comes through here, 53. They're in essence the same road. This road goes out and connects to 95 way further north. So you can see you're coming You're not gonna come and loop and go somewhere else. You're either going or coming from Bayview. FYI, the road classifications, perimeter is a minor collector and 54 is a major collector. What does that mean? Why do we care? Well, it speaks to the capacity of the roads, that they're large roads meant to carry traffic. And as such, accesses are monitored, they're controlled. Through those kinds of processes, they're built to attract the traffic. Traffic counts on those roads, what are they? So I obtained the traffic counts that were done in May of last year. And we find that in the peak hour, which is the busiest time, in this case was around 3 o'clock, 3 to 5, the most traffic that, and it was taken right here, about 1,000 feet east of, I don't remember the road, it says it right there, Meriwether. We had 38 cars in both directions was the peak. 38 cars in an hour. That's the most this road sees. So there's not a significant amount of traffic at all. The numbers in quotes are the cars per day. So in the westbound direction, there were 349 cars in a day. In the eastbound direction, 400 in a day. That's equivalent to a quiet residential neighborhood. Being the Bayviews to and from, really not a through destination. Why are people going there? Let's look at some of them. Marinas, restaurants, we have a local market. I've just picked some of them that would attract people if you don't live there from the area. If you live there, obviously, you're going to the post office, you're going to the grocery store, to and from. So the point of this is to say there's really no through traffic or very little traffic that, hold it, starts here, comes through and just keeps going. So what influences our travel paths as we travel through? What criteria are we subconsciously or consciously using to decide what roads we're going to drive on? These are just some of the big ones. Traffic congestion, pedestrian conflicts, multiple access points. For example, you're driving down a typical residential road. There's driveways, there's kids, parked cars, uncontrolled intersections. So we don't like to drive through intersections that don't have stop signs. That's a deterrent to us. Narrow roads. We don't like to drive on narrow roads if we're going from some place to another place. On-street parking, you have a perception of congestion. People coming out between cars. It narrows the roads even more, which we don't like. So we're not driving on those streets if we're going from someplace or coming to. We're going to find a street without these things on them, and that's what how we're going to decide where to drive. Also, out of direction. We're not going to take a road that takes us longer to get where we're going. So the idea of, well, with the connection of fur, is there any impact with that? What would it be? And we've heard some testimony in previous hearings. I believe bypass was the word that was used. Let's call it an alternate route. Let's look at the network layout. So this is the through road. If you're coming into Bayview, first of all, you're going to one of these attractors, you're staying for a bit, and you're leaving. You're not coming to do a cut through to keep going and just drive through. Let's look at Fur. Well, look how far away Fur is. There's no direct connection to Highway 54, period. These are the access points, first, third, and even fourth doesn't have a direct connection. You have to flip off and come wind through this residential neighborhood. Fifth and sixth. So even if you were looking for somewhere, you wouldn't directly find it. Let's look at this residential neighborhood. What's traffic going to do here? Well, these are all uncontrolled intersections here, which means there's no stop signs, and you'll see in a minute, visibility issues, narrow roads. Fur itself is 15 feet wide. And I'm going to give you a visual of that in a minute. There's parking both sides on Fur and these internal streets. These are a little wider. These cross streets, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 1st, they're about 20 feet wide. I've measured them. Also, in these residential roads, you've got numerous driveways. Like I said, you've got parking. You know, I haven't seen a lot of pedestrians out there, but it's a residential neighborhood. Travel time, you'll see here in a bit that the travel speed through these residential neighborhoods is less here. It's the same posted speed limit, but you'll see driving conditions are going to be slower. By the way, at this point right here where they took the traffic counts, the average speed was 56 miles an hour. The posted speed is 35. I'm saying not that we, have a plethora of, non-law-abiding citizens, but you'll see in a minute, the visual on this roadway my point is travel time on this road is much faster. Going in, coming out. I'm going to take you on a little visual tour now. I'm starting right down here. And I just photologged it as we drove through town. So you can get an idea of, from a driver's perspective, what do you see in your decision-making as you drive through town. Okay, so I'm on 54 now, and this is the First Avenue connection. First comes off here, heads off to the west, as you saw. There's the 3rd Street connection. You're headed to a road, you've got some visibility issues. There's nothing that would attract you to randomly turn into these roads to find another way in and out of Bayview. Now you've taken the corner and you're headed into town, headed toward the lake. As you can see, it's not 4th Street, but it's a little connector that connects to 4th Street, which right here parallels the road to the north. Now we're in town. Look at what we see from a driver's perspective. There's no parking. The road is plenty wide. The accesses are controlled. That's the 5th Street intersection right there. The accesses are controlled, which means you've got stop signs either side. So a driver is not subconsciously nervous about cars randomly pulling out in front of them. You do have driveway connections and you do have, commercial businesses there, but they're nothing like the driveways you'll see when we go through a residential neighborhood. That's 6th Street. Again, businesses on either side. You see a nice wide road. 2-lane, this road is where you're going to drive if you're coming to or from Bayview. Yeah. And now we're headed out of town. That connection is a street that I can't remember the name of it.
Road.
Which one?
Cape Horn Road.
Thank you, Cape Horn Road. All right, and now we've made the turn and we're technically on perimeter and we're headed out of town. That one. Okay, now I'm back on 1st Street. This is the intersection of 1st and 54. So I'm headed down 1st Street. We're on the residential. This is about 20 feet wide right here. And just notice some of the things we've talked about. Driving through, the road narrows. That arrow points to the 1st Street connection. If you were randomly driving through here, you would really have to be looking to see these intersections and to even know where they would go. That's the connection of 1st Street. So now we're on 1st Street. Road narrows, vegetation in the summer, driveways. You don't see much park. I didn't. And the folks after me might have something to say about that, but parking, but it's still 15-foot wide road. This is it. This is the same shot roughly during the winter time. Small road. There's not a lot of snow, but it can build up. So again, you've got some huge visual detractors. We're not comfortable driving on these kind of roads. There's the connection of Fur and 3rd, I believe. As we approach it, you've got fences, you've got cars, driveways. There's the same shot in the wintertime. Narrow road. This is the 3rd Street intersection. After this, you can see the road really does get narrow. It starts to get a little bit windy. Notice the intersection is uncontrolled. We have some visibility issues. Again, this is uncomfortable for drivers to drive this. They're not going to randomly drive through here looking for a faster way to get through Bayview. There's the same shot in the wintertime. Vegetation helps clear out some of the visibility, but now you've got snow issues. Now I'm looking north towards the 5th Street intersection. You can see road narrows, driveways. It's just not a place you're going to drive through. Pretty much the same shot in the wintertime. 6th Street, I think that's the 6th Street. Anyway, 4th, thank you. Visibility, uncontrolled intersection, driveways, traffic conflicts. There's 5th.
That's 5th and Fir right there.
Correct. 5th and Fir, I'm looking north. We're gonna head right up to where Fir connects. Again, same issues. That's Fir and Schaefer. We're looking to the dedicated undeveloped right-of-way where Fir would connect. Same issues. To sum up, Bayview is really destination. Nobody's looking for a shortcut to go through it. They're going there for the destinations. They're going to stay. They're going to do whatever they came to do. Or if you live there, you're certainly not looking to cut through. Traffic volumes on perimeter and 54, 38 vehicles per hour. That's very low. There is no through traffic. We've talked about that. An alternate route is really just doesn't pass the smell test. Out of direction travel, you wouldn't do it because it's quicker to drive to stay on 54 and perimeter. Just the items we've seen. Uncontrolled intersections on any street other than perimeter and 54. Narrow roads, on-street parking. So to sum up, this is characterizes the traffic flow. When we look at a one-way, I guess in my opinion, the only effect a one-way is going to have is to limit the ability of, let me come back to a picture real quick. Bear with me, let's get an overall, there you go. It's going to affect the ability of this residential traffic, whether they can exit this way or not. The traffic from the subdivision, as we've seen in previous testimony, is minimal. If the one-way goes north, then you really don't have any traffic from this subdivision cutting through. And nobody's going to turn on perimeter if they're lost and wander into this neighborhood. I don't know there's a huge, in my opinion, difference between north and south, but I think the north would favor solely this residential that would allow them to exit. First responders, there's the fire district right there. They're going to go whatever direction they want to go anyway. We know that. So whether a one-way is north or south won't affect them. I think that's it. I think I've said everything I need to say.
Okay, thank you. Was there anybody else in the applicant's camp that wished to speak? Okay, then I will go. Okay.
That was a developer.
Okay, so I will go ahead and start with somebody who is in favor and wishes to speak. And once again, folks, if you can keep your comments directed to the Highway District's information, the one-way northbound, correct? Yep, one-way northbound. So Mr. Schmidt, Chuck, Gary, either one of you want to speak? Go ahead. Okay, Chuck Schmidt in favor wishes to speak.
Hello guys, how you doing? Chuck Schmidt, 903 North Armstrong Drive, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Project on this with my father. It's been quite an experience and something that I'll be proud of when it's done. I'll be quick. I just have grown up here for nearly 30 years. Love this place. Been raised to always do good, to always think of others, whether it's not in my favor or is. Longevity has always been better in that case. Even from hearing from the previous topic, Idaho is definitely becoming into a space where it's a weird conglomeration, and it's hard for you guys to make these decisions, and I respect that. What I see with the traffic, sitting down with good friends who are, on county, deputies, from first responders, talking to the fire guys, continuity all the way through makes sense. I'm one that has driven through Bayview many times, on my motorcycle here and there, not once gone through. And I think that with this happening, it will be in the better benefit of someone like my father and I doing this rather than what could potentially happen, which we do see, which is, a structure of how to figure it out. But, I've worked directly with people who have hundreds of millions of dollars. You're talking guys from Seattle, Nevada, California that have, I know one firsthand that has over 30,000 units, and I've seen how they do things. My father and I are more than happy to work with people on all this, and I feel like we have. And I just want to reiterate that I do find that the conclusion that Lakes Highway District has come to seems meaningful. Even going back with engineers and looking at traffic studies, you can go left and right and all sorts of ways with it, and it's a very simple situation. And we're not building cell phone towers. We're not doing that. It's just residential. That was residential to begin with. That's all I say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead to a group presentation, and Commissioner Matari is going to read the names. These people need to stand up and remain standing till we get at least 10, and then that way the group presentation will have 15 minutes.
And if I butcher anyone's name, I apologize in advance. First person is, I believe, Howard, is it Ritchie? Okay, thank you. Edith Bishop. Jenny Prince. Jenny Prince. Okay.
There might be some people on Zoom as well, David, so if you're on Zoom and you are part of this list, would you just push or raise your hand button?
That wasn't one of them.
Margaret Nelson. Margaret Nelson. Bill Summers. And Jan Summers.
Okay.
Is it Sue Thompson? Last name Thompson? Oh, sorry.
Standing, that's me.
Sorry there. Frances Miller.
She's on Zoom.
Okay.
She is on Zoom.
Jeff Frensdorf.
Yeah, I'm on Zoom too, and I allocate my time out.
Okay. Michael, is it Robinson? Or, it's really hard to tell. On East 4th, Bayview.
I happen to know that the Robinsons were exposed to COVID and couldn't come to the meeting.
Okay, we're up to
Okay.
7.
So it would be Judith Robinson would be next. Gary Spahn.
Okay.
Okay.
He's on Zoom, he said.
Well, is that Gary back there? Okay. Faye Bear. And Tia Bear? Ted, I'm sorry.
You don't want to wish to give your time? Okay, that should be 10. Okay, so Mike Lee. Opposed, wishes to speak, and you have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd just like to say that GPS is going to run people through that route, and the Gawker tourists in Bayview now are something that we have really just seen increase. We have 40 more units are going to be proposed for the hillside above there. Okay, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. My name is Mike Lee. I live at 16023 East Schaefer Street in Bayview, Idaho. After reading your previous decision, I'm honored to have this opportunity to address you once again. I believe you truly understand the depth of our issue and are committed to serving your constituents. It's as if this issue was made to order to test your resolve to defend the citizens of Kootenai County from governmental overreach and ensure our right to elected and appointed officials who recognize that they are tasked to serve and not to rule. I don't think I have to remind you that there is a special fiduciary duty on your shoulders when addressing issues of public safety, especially in the field of transportation, where poor decision making is literally a matter of life and death. A one-way road is not required. The one-way offer is a non-code required egress that directs traffic onto an already hazardous street. Even with one-way, scores of cars, day and night, will transit through previously quiet neighborhoods on narrow streets without street lights, crosswalks, sidewalks, or shoulders. This is administrative overreach and engineering negligence. Is Lakes Highway District Attorney misrepresenting Idaho law? We believe when Lakes Highway District Director Shanley quotes Attorney Susan Weeks saying the district cannot approve a gate installation that would completely block for a road, she may be knowingly misrepresenting the law. Notice, Mr. Shanley doesn't mention the Idaho code that they claim restricts our gate. Attorney Weeks testified previously it violated some part of Title 40, Chapter 23. Then Lakes Highway District required us to file a Freedom of Information request before sending us a printout of Title 40 on encroachments, number 402319. But I ask you, is it even possible for Lakes Highway District to encroach upon themselves? Because that's what they're saying. This gate will be an encroachment, but they'd be encroaching on themselves. More to the point, Title 40 gives Lakes Highway District the right to do whatever they want to regulate the roadways as long as they follow the best management practices established by local, state, federal, and professional traffic management guidelines. They just can't make arbitrary decisions. Has your attorney reviewed Susan Weeks' testimony that Title 40, Chapter 23 restricts our right to a gate on Fur Avenue? In either case, this is the seventh unsubstantiated excuse Lakes Highway District has tried to use to force this egress onto Bayview. Director Shanley goes on to say, they might be willing to make Fur Avenue a one-way. He never said they would make it a one-way. He said they might consider it. So you're asked to make a decision that they may not even live up to. We say he is ignoring the very guidelines he is entrusted to uphold. Denying our gate clearly violates the Institute of Transportation Engineers guidelines for subdivision streets. It states, streets should minimize traffic through neighborhoods. Safety for vehicles and pedestrian traffic is the priority. Don't rely on traffic regulations for safety like a one-way. Local streets should be designed for a low volume of traffic. Local streets should be designed to discourage excessive speed. Pedestrian vehicular conflict points should be minimized, and there should be a minimum number of intersections. Those are the guidelines they're supposed to follow. But rather than following proper fiduciary, traffic engineering, legal, and administrative procedures, Lakes Highway instead are doing their best to discourage us from asserting our 5th and 14th Amendment rights to life, liberty, property, and due process. Why is Lakes Highway District continuing to refuse to honor our citizen and constitutional rights with this untenable one-way solution? Safety above all else. The decision tree for transportation is rooted in safety above all else, followed by protecting property rights, both of which are served by a gate on Fur Avenue. Reconfiguring the traffic flow with a proposed one-way is at very least, especially considering the overwhelming public interest and potential impacts, should trigger a full traffic impact study with in-depth public input. One-way is not a due process kind of compromise. A one-way is not a compromise at all because the complainants have had no say in the process except these hearings where we get to be told what we should agree to. And please explain, might be willing to consider a one-way. What does that even mean? One way is no excuse for no traffic impact study. One-way traffic solution will divide our town, creating a busy street that endangers both motorized, non-motorized, and pedestrian traffic. A one-way traffic solution that is hidden among substandard residential streets is a nonsense prescription and a traffic safety nightmare. A patchwork use of traffic regulations is never superior to doing the right engineering. This endless stream of excuses to ruin our neighborhoods has caused us pain and suffering. We feel violated and misrepresented by Lakes Highway District. Requiring Fur Avenue be open in a manner that is improper is an improper use of governmental authority. Lakes Highway District is acting in an arbitrary, capricious, and ultra-virus manner, violating due process, trying to enforce a requirement that is not on the books. We are your constituents, not Lakes Highway District. And I'm sorry to put you in this position. I really am. I don't want to be here. Nobody wants to be here. But we defend our community, and we will not stop. Please do not allow governmental overreach by Lakes Highway District over the Board of County Commissioners and the rights of your constituents. Proposing a one-way is just an attempt to avoid the fact that no roadway in Bayview meets highway engineering standards. Not a single crosswalk conveys pedestrians across the arterial roadway that separates the residential area from the commercial district along the lake. You see these tourists are flocking there now, and they're just like, they're looking down the streets, and you know, we don't stop for them. We don't. Throughout town, pedestrians are forced to walk down the middle of roadways without sidewalks. Inadequate by any standards and hazardous even to vehicles, not to mention bicycles, golf carts, ATVs, motorcycles, skateboards, and scooters, oftentimes operated by tourists who don't realize they are on their own. This is why Lakes Highway does not want a traffic impact study, because it would reveal a serious neglect for traffic safety. For any major traffic flow alteration that significantly affects an entire town, the bare minimum should be a traffic impact study. No traffic impact study is administrative and engineering negligence. One-way traffic is not a solution for hazardously inadequate roadways.
Commissioner Duncan, I take you on your words. I paraphrased them a little, but I tried to be true to them. It is your duty to ensure government adheres to its proper role to protect life, liberty, and property. Please ask yourselves, does our plea align with the Idaho state and U.S. constitutions? Does it limit governmental overreach? Does it comply with state statute? And finally, does it honor the right of the citizens of Bayview to life, liberty, and property? The answer to all of the above is yes. The solution is simple: a gate. The government of a free people is benevolent and not intrusive. Government is supposed to protect our independence, not manage our lives. That is the only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised. This is your opportunity to demonstrate your commitment to your constituents' concerns. Matters of public safety demand informed decision-making grounded in expert evaluation to uphold Bayview's rights, safety, and community values. On behalf of the residents of Bayview, we really do thank you. We are so grateful for your attention to our concerns, but a one-way street leads directly to court, which is something you can easily avoid with a simple gate. Thank you again.
Okay, folks, keep your applause down, please. You can raise your hands if you agree with the speaker. Thank you. Okay, I will go on to, oh boy, Doug Landwehr? Landwehr, thank you. In favor, wishes to speak.
Doug Landwehr, 34300 Cool Winds Court, Bayview. There's no perfect solution. In agreement with the engineer that a gate would be the best solution, but if that's not legal in Lakes Highway District's court, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know all the rules, but with that one-way solution, it is better because those people would, in the development, would, they have no reason to go, racing through town. It's human nature to go the quickest, shortest, easiest way. I think you would find also that even some of the people in town, when a lot of people in town walk, they would, walk through that development to go over to the post office, maybe even to go downtown, the people closer to that area, because there is kind of a walking trail down the edge of perimeter. And so that being said, the one way is a better solution. A gate would be the best solution if that's legal. I don't know. Anyhow, so I just don't see a lot of traffic. The development's going to go out perimeter, which is an arterial. The people in town, they're going to keep going the way they came, or if it's one way, they will go out through that way if it's closer, quicker, easier, human nature as well. So that's pretty much my point is, again, a gate would be the best solution if it's legal. That's for somebody else to determine. But, the one way, it will curb the traffic into the original Bayview or the area that's, now it's town. And the people in the development, they will go out perimeter. It's human nature to go the quickest, easiest way. And again, I think some of the people in town would start walking through there and, visiting with their new neighbors and friends and like that. So there's no perfect solution, but I think as far as minimizing the traffic into the original part of town, a gate would be best, but the one way would definitely have an impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Frank Abbott opposed, wishes to speak. And I would just ask if somebody's already said what you were going to say, you can just say, it's already been said. So that way we can get out of here before midnight. So go right ahead.
I'm Frank Abbott. I live on 34067 North Spruce Avenue. That's at the intersection of Spruce and 5th. I drive a truck. I deliver and stage construction materials to pretty much most of the developments within the past few years. A large percentage of those deliveries were down one-entry neighborhoods. The highway district stipulation that for be a second access to Lakestone Estates is for emergency vehicles. That's not the case in a good amount of these developments. It's not needed. We don't want it. If there is an emergency, if a second access is required for Lakestone Estates, coming off a perimeter road would be the most expedient. Change of topic here. In July, first week in July, all the residents on 5th Street pull out orange road cones or some sort of barricade to prevent people parking their boat trailers on their front lawns. This extends all the way up to Fir Avenue. I set the cones out a little later because there's a young girl right across the street who's learning how to ride her bike. This was the road cone where she rides at a week after Bayview Days. As you can see, it wasn't just knocked over, it was full on tread over the cone. Thankfully, that wasn't the little girl. Last year, we're grateful that it wasn't her and that it was just the orange cone that we were pulling out from the back axle of the silver minivan. Yes, Bayview is a destination place. As such, people like to explore the neighborhoods. They come cruising through, checking the place out. 5th and Spruce is a major turnaround for people who realize they're in a small rural neighborhood. If they don't turn around there, they go up to Fir and loop back on Schaefer Street. Watched a girl in a club camper sitting at the intersection of Corbin and 5th Street, trying to figure out where she wanted to go. We're often getting requests of where the campgrounds are.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, Glenn Sather, in favor, may wish to speak.
Good evening, Chair Duncan and Commissioners. I'm Glenn Sather, 3755 East Tobler Road in Hayden, Idaho. So I am here as an advocate for the development on topic for tonight. And I don't pretend to have any insight into all of the proceedings that led up to this hearing tonight, other than what I've heard secondhand. But the observation that I wanted to make, I wanted to draw a parallel to your first topic of the night, which was having to do with code enforcement. And if you just indulge me just for a moment, and then I'd like to make a connection to the topic on hand tonight. It seems like the code enforcement issue at the county level had a tremendous amount of passionate debate tonight, and people have strong feelings on both sides of the issue. And there was a considerable amount of angst directed at you and at the code, let's say, for lack of enforcement. And understandably so, because when there's lack of enforcement of a particular code or particular rule of law, people get frustrated. And then as gatekeepers of the playbook, you as commissioners would have the discretion to change the playbook so that you can enforce or tend to encourage that enforcement even further than what it already is. So the parallel, it seems to me, is applicable to this discussion tonight, inasmuch as there's a set of rules already on the books that the applicant presumably has met. And he has dotted the i's, crossed the t's, presumably, and has brought this issue before you tonight. And there's opposition, of course, but the point that I'd like to make is that if someone is playing by the rules, bringing an issue to you, and they've dotted their i's, crossed their t's, if that person is not allowed to execute, then the rule of law is being trampled just the same. So it seems to me that the applicant, and especially tonight with the Lakes discussion on the highway district, if these issues have been met, it seems fair that you would simply approve it if all of the checks, the boxes have been checked. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Larry and Teresa, is it Dubé? Opposed, wishes to speak.
Yeah, I live at 33936 North Fir Avenue, and that's exactly where they're wanting to do this one-way thing. Just an insight, just so people know, the safety thing is my biggest problem. I was out cutting wood today on my property, and I seen 4 kids on bicycles riding up and down First Street. And, you know, they can do that because they're unaware that there's going to be any traffic or anything there, and there's never been for many years. And that was just today. On weekdays, you can add a few more kids on bicycles and other pedestrian traffic walking up and down those streets as well. And my last comment is, for this Lakestone development they want to do, why do the residents of Bayview have to suffer the reasons and the excuses for putting a one-way street or even making Fir a thoroughfare through my neighborhood and other neighborhoods in our other residents in this area too as well? To end that, like I said, it's going to cause a lot of suffering, and what is it going to take? Is it going to take one of the child's get hit by a truck or a car, or somebody get injured badly, killed, whatever, before they, decide to do the right thing? So anyway, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marty Fish, in favor, wishes to speak?
You're falling down,
Remember, address the commissioners, not the audience.
Never mind. My name's Marty Fish. I live on Howard Road, which you all might remember used to have a dead end on it, right? And I agree with the gentleman here that it's dangerous. Our dog got run over by a gentleman speeding right in front of my kids. Traumatic, horrible. Here's my deal. I want reasonable, logical growth, okay? So all the subdivisions down my road is bringing more traffic. It's a bummer. I get it. I don't like it. But guess what? They crossed their T's, dotted their I's, and checked the boxes. They're going according to Lakes Highway District and the county codes, zoning, everything, and you can't stop it. I mean, you can fight it and you can disagree with it, but the truth of the matter is, if they're doing it according to the rules, right. And I also agree with Doug. I think a gate would be great, but if it's not code, it's really not your call, right? You have to say, well, here's what an expert said who's in charge of that division, and you have to judge on your own if everything has been met as far as the builder. So when I drive in to do plumbing in Bayview, I either come in through perimeter or on the other road, and a lot of times I don't go through all the skinny roads because, like everyone's saying, there's kids out there, someone's pulling their boat in, or there's a RV in the way. I usually, especially if I'm going up to your house.
Not again.
No problem. Remember you said that. Next time you're crying and begging.
I love you, buddy.
I love you too, buddy. So I'll come up fifth or sixth. And it's just more of a thoroughfare. And I think a gate would be great. I agree with a gate. But for some reason we can't do that. I go with that. So, I also want to vouch for the builder. This guy's a quality dude, and he's going to do the right thing. And careful what you wish for, because you might end up, if he sells it to a big corporation in Seattle, we're not doing this anymore. It goes to court no matter what. So I do the right thing, whatever it is. I don't know what it is, but I mean, a gate would be great, but this is a viable option. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still like you.
Kale Coast, in favor. I'm sorry, we just did an in favor. Hang on here. Oh, wait, nope, that got in the wrong pile. Okay, Marie Streeter, opposed, may wish to speak. Pass, okay. Lacey, nope, we're just going with Lacey.
That's okay, I'll defer to the in favor and then I can go after him if that's all right.
Okay, I'm sorry, who did you want?
If you wanted to do the in favor first, then I can go after him.
Okay, that's fine. Kale Coast, in favor, wishes to speak.
Hello, my name is Kale Coast. I live in 5690 Steamboat Bend. I live in Post Falls. I'm from Post Falls. I grew up here. And I've seen Post Falls change quite a bit since I've noticed. I've been able to notice at 5 years old. And I'm seeing a lot of high-rise complexes from out-of-state builders. I'm a finished carpenter. I work on these. It's a little bit bittersweet because I'm kind of helping build these, but I'm a local guy trying to put my spin on development. And I'm seeing a lot of high-rise apartments taking over Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, and it's jamming up our streets and it's just awkward. It's hard to get around now. I'm late to everything. There's all this. All I wanted to speak towards was my experience with Post Falls, and it's a beautiful. We live in paradise. I think we all agree. We live in a gorgeous place. It is paradise up here, and people are going to move here. No matter what we do here, it's just going to happen. People are going to come up here. So we have an opportunity to allow a local, the guy that's lived here his whole life, to put a stamp on this area of town, or someone from out of state, maybe an international corporation, come in and build high rises. That kind of negates the whole argument about the roads, because it's going to be either 24 single family homes with families or stack it up with people and traffic. That's my outlook on the whole situation. Wouldn't you rather have a local guy with local people, single family homes, or would you rather have someone from out of town come in, doesn't care, stacking people on top of each other and bringing in way more traffic than what we're talking about today? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lacey? And I
Thank
take
you.
you're opposed.
So I didn't mark that on there because I wanted to hear what folks had to say first.
Okay.
I'm in favor of freedom. And that's, I think, what we're really discussing here tonight. If I were to survey each person in this room and ask what the top 3 reasons are that you guys love North Idaho, it's freedom. I believe that's what we're really debating here tonight. Some of you are here to infringe on personal property rights, the Idaho Constitution, and the fundamentals of the American way because you want your neighbor to do things your way, regardless of the law. This isn't just Bayview, this is the whole county. Since the inception of zoning in 1973, the plots the Schmidt family owns have been zoned restricted residential. The zoning allowed on the very same piece of property a 29-lot subdivision to be approved by previous commissioners. They've reduced that number to 24. This has been done by the book. No backroom deals, no secret handshakes, no zoning has been changed. They are only building what has already been planned for that land for the last 50 years. People will want to come here, even more as the surrounding states devolve into chaos. But it's not logical or reasonable to expect that industry and capitalism, markers of American success, will just cease. I understand the sentiment of being overwhelmed with the growth in our community. Honestly, when I first heard about this, I was like, Gary, you got the wrong girl. I don't want the growth either. But pulling the rug out from under your neighbor and infringing on his rights is not the answer. When growth and development happens, we want someone who understands our lifestyle and communities to be driving the bus. The Schmidt family has lived here since 1995. They've supported and participated in our communities, schools, churches, and charities for 28 years. They've raised their kids here, taken them hunting, fishing, and hiking in the vast public lands available to us. Gary Schmidt is one of the last small-town local guys trying to build responsibly. He wants to cherish and protect this lifestyle we have as well. He gets us. And that's why he has chosen to develop responsibly with larger lots, single homes, and has taken every consideration to establish a family-friendly neighborhood. If you want to railroad your politicians into halting this legal development, the next guy isn't likely going to play by the same rules. If you force him to sell the land, I can promise you the next big developer that buys it isn't going to turn it into your private nature reserve. You love it here because of what you view as the ideal lifestyle we have in North Idaho. This idyllic life rests on the foundation of freedom. You own your property and you are entitled to rights and freedoms on your property so long as you are within the boundaries of the laws. But what if you had a new neighbor that decided that they didn't like how you did it? If you start manipulating the intent of the law, regulations, or city codes to achieve dominion over your neighbor's rights, you introduce a dangerous precedent that will ultimately affect the freedoms we all hold dear. Freedom is a two-way street.
Thank you, Lacey. Okay. All right, we have Bob Prince, opposed, may wish to speak. Pass, okay. Edith Bishop, opposed, does not wish to speak. And if you change your mind, please let me know. Okay, I'll just go through these because they all do not wish to speak. Howard Bishop, is that it? Okay. And Susan Thompson, I think you guys gave up your time. Is that correct? Okay. And Dean Poole, opposed, does not wish to speak. Okay. All right. Robin Vieira, opposed, does not wish to speak. Gary Spahn, opposed, does not wish to speak. And Chris, I cannot read that last name, Bolero maybe? Opposed and does or does not wish to speak. Okay. All right. Oh, goodness. Gerald, is it class? I'm not really good at reading handwriting sometimes. In favor, may wish to speak. Okay.
I wanted to speak, I think my sheet's still back, and I would take some of their time.
Okay. Do you want to grab your sheet for me? Okay. Okay, Francis Seltzer, in favor, may wish to speak?
It's actually missing. Do you have it?
Okay. Francis, wish to speak?
Already covered. Pass.
Oh, covered, thank you. Michael Hardesty, in favor, may wish to speak?
Already covered.
Already covered, thank you. And Linda Landwehr, in favor, does not wish to speak. Okay. Ben Jacklich, in favor, does not wish to speak. Emma Schmidt, in favor, does not wish to speak. Camille Schmidt, in favor, does not wish to speak. Let's see, Mike, okay, and I already had this name, Matt Paricio, and I think I butchered the last time too. In favor, does not wish to speak. Leroy Thompson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Andrew Olson, in favor, does, Andrew, do you want to speak? Huh? Oh, he went to work. Okay. Arlie Esau, in favor, does not wish to speak. Melanie Esau, in favor, does not wish to speak. Clayton Ketron, in favor, does not wish to speak. Mitch Ketron, in favor, does not wish to speak. And David, nope, not going to get that last name. In favor, does not wish to speak. Okay. So Suzette, is that, okay. And you have not given up your time before? Okay, but you are opposed and wish to speak?
Correct.
Okay, so come on up. So you have 3 minutes.
I have Robin's time as well.
Nope, doesn't work that way. You have to have 10 people to have 15 minutes.
Oh, shoot, I
Yep.
didn't realize that, okay. All right. So, I feel like a lot of people in Bayview right now, we just kind of feel like we don't have much recourse. We've gone through a lot of these different activities, and we're in favor of this development as well, by the way. By no means are we in denial or opposed to the development. We just don't want this traffic on our roads. I just wanted to assert certain positions that you guys, you represent us and you're pledged to serve us and protect us, our community. We count on you to do that. And I had heard, I think I was at Lakes Highway, that there was originally a plat map to punch in that road in like the 1960s when it was an 8-acre piece. And that's a logical thing, you know, you want to punch it in, but it's changed. You know, it's not just an 8-acre piece now with one home. Now it's quite a few homes. And anyway, I'd like to talk about vacation and gates, you know, different options for the community not to absorb all that extra traffic. I mean, we feel like the rug's been pulled out from underneath us. I mean, it's not that, I mean, we want these people to live in Bayview. We want them to be our neighbors. We are very hospitable. As you know, you've probably been to Bayview. And I guess the big thing that I just wanted to state was we just don't want any abuse of power. You know, we want to make sure that, you know, you take the position to protect and serve and to keep in mind the value of human life. Deer and turkeys and the Bayview lifestyle is pretty slow and friendly, and there's an awful lot of visiting that goes on in these streets. You can't really pass someone without getting a visit. It's kind of nice. And that will change if this is punched through. We'll be putting fences up, and we'll have to fence in our kids and our animals. And that's a lot of fences. I mean, it's a big imposition on the community for this to, this extra traffic to come in. Considering less than a block away is a fantastic arterial. It just makes no sense unless you're going to go back to 1960 and say, oh, well, that's what's on the plat map. We're going to just go with the plan. Well, the plan's changed because it's not a single home on that plat map anymore. It's 24 homes and lots of traffic, boats and trailers and extra cars. And they will be coming through town to get to the beach and whatnot. But anyway, we're not opposed to the development in any way.
Thank you. Okay, I have Rick. Oh, my goodness. Writes tiny and starts with an H.
That's me. I'll reserve for possible rebuttal on behalf of the applicant.
Okay, and I think we're two there, and then Connie Kruger may wish to speak. Okay. And so we are to Zoom people.
At this time, if there's anyone on Zoom.
There's a fella.
All right, you can bring that up. So did you already give up your time for the first speaker?
I really didn't realize I had given, but there's an important point that needs to be brought up, and I'd like to speak to it.
Well, I can't allow that, but you can find somebody else who has not given up their time yet to, and you can tell your point to them. Sorry.
There's a fellow back here that.
Yeah. Did you change your mind, Mr. Hardesty? You may come. Did anybody online?
Not yet.
Not yet?
But there's
Okay.
7 people that may.
Okay, well, have them raise their hands or whatever, so.
My name is Michael Hardesty. I live in Coeur d'Alene, 2104 North Serena Drive. And I've heard a lot of concern tonight about traffic through neighborhoods. I live in an old part of Coeur d'Alene, just kind of on the corner of 9th and just north of the freeway. And we have a street that connects from 9th to 15th. And we see a lot of traffic. I would say we probably see a double car count on our busy hours than what 54 sees at Perimeter Road. And while the traffic is, it's unfortunate, it's the reality. People are commuting from a place to another, and I think the culture of our town and our county here is that of respect, and generally we see that on the roadways. You know, that's always not always the case, but for the most part we see that. So I understand there's a concern for traffic, but I think the reality is the amount of lots I see in Bayview, and I didn't have time to look up the amount of lots, but we're talking about adding 24 lots, which is, I think, probably a negligible percentage increase to population in Bayview. For the concern to be as high as I've heard it stated tonight, especially with the actions that have been tried to take by Gary Schmidt and the builder involved there, they've tried to mitigate any of those concerns to the best of their ability as far as I understand it. So I just wanted to make that note.
Thank you. All right, anybody on Zoom?
I wish to speak.
Okay.
Give us your name and go right ahead.
My name is Cheryl Puckett. I live on Schaefer Street at 16023. Perhaps you think opening up Fir Avenue to one-way traffic won't make a difference. And that's because you don't live in Bayview. I can tell you, having lived here 45 years, that I will take that shortcut route 4 to 6 times a day. Yes, that many times. It will be a shortcut as well for everyone else in the Bayview Township. Opening up Fir Avenue will cause it to be a thoroughfare. Mr. Dobler completely missed the point. He should have got out of his car and talked to all those people in those houses and asked them how they will drive their cars. Why are you taking the gate off the table? Did you see empirical data that the gate can't be on Fir Avenue? Because I haven't seen it. I put in a freedom of information with Lakes Highway District, waited 10 days, and I asked specifically to show me where it said that you cannot have a gate on the public road, and it never came. It was just the statute 40, chapter 40, section 23. Nowhere did it say that. Why would you make a decision on this if it isn't an Idaho statute? Also, so many people spoke in favor of this, but not understanding that the county code does not require a second egress. I heard so many people in favor didn't even understand. If they wanted you to dot the I's, cross the T's, then they should realize that would mean you would put a gate. You wouldn't allow this because county code doesn't even require it. Lakes Highway District has said they won't sign off on this project if there's a gate. I say Lakes Highway is making a mistake. And we all know that everyone, even Lakes Highway, can make mistakes. Why not make Lakestone Estate subdivision a private road? It is my understanding, you can put a gate on a private road. Lakes Highway isn't offering this as an option. I would imagine the developer would rather have his subdivision private than having half of Bayview driving through it. I'm asking you to serve the citizens of Bayview and not Lakes Highway District. And I would say put the gate up, and and let the cards fall as they fall with the developer dealing with Lakes Highway.
Ms. Puckett, your
So-
time is up, but I really appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Duncan.
Thank you. All right, anybody else wish to speak?
Yes, my name is Allie Spawn. I live at, good evening, by the way, and thank you for letting me speak. I live at 33915 North Fir Avenue. The traffic flow example that the contractor used was not usual. The date was 5/3, which is not usual traffic. From Memorial Day, 5/31, to Labor Day, this is a vacation destination area. When the developer develops, which I'm not against the development at all, but when he develops 25 homes or 24 homes, times 2 cars, usually families have 2 or even more, if they're families, that would be an enormous amount of cars, and they will use Fir Avenue. They'll also have friends and family come, especially during the summer. We had a taste of an excessive traffic during Bayview days. Main Street was closed and cars were directed to use Fir Avenue. There was a steady flow of cars, trucks with boats, and trucks with RVs. These are visitors who don't worry about the residents' safety, not that they don't care, but that all they want to do is go to Bayview days. So I'm in favor of having a private road, as Cheryl suggested, and having a gate, or even making the development where there's a fence, where they don't have to go out through Fir. Make the perimeter road the in and out. A lot of developments have, you can't get out of development except going into it and going out of it. That would be something for the developer to look into. And I thank you for my time.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My name is Norma Jean Knowles. I live at 34417 North Robin Lane. The cross street for me is Perimeter Road. We will be living, the Lakestone addition is going to be not too far from us, a couple of blocks. I'm not against Lakestone. I think he's done a very good job of trying to plan, and I think he's done an excellent job as far as trying to protect Bayview Creek. I have to agree with everybody about the one-way for Fir. It's not workable. This traffic study that was done, as Allie stated, was not done at the right time. Our business, everything picks up after Memorial Day, and it keeps on until probably Labor Day. And then it kind of dwindles down. There are many more vehicles that come and go in Bayview. And I do know, as another person stated, that there are people that are driving through our roads. Some of them are private roads, looking for houses that are for sale. So it will increase the traffic on Fir, which is small and narrow, and in the wintertime it is extremely icy. I think that Lakes Highway is not listening to Bayview, and I think that somebody needs to make them listen. I don't know if a gate is applicable or not. I do kind of agree with both Cheryl and Allie that the road into Lakestone should be a private road. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? All right. Gary, why don't you come on up, and if somebody chimes in, we'll handle them later.
Hopefully you can hear me. I'm Gary Schmidt. I live at 9899 North Maple Street, Hayden, Idaho. I'm the guy that owns all this that's causing all the grief here. I believe in that which is good. I really try to find the good in everything. I get it. I'm 64. I just beat cancer. That was not easy, but it really gives you some clarity of, and letting the dust settle on stuff that's not as important as other stuff. So, made me awfully proud, by the way. The son said he always tries to choke out, do the right thing. Because it's not about what I want. It's not about what a few folks that live in a neighborhood that when platted in 1962, whoever the fact finder was, has 3 streets that divide into here. We only need to use 1. The face of their plat says it's going to connect to restricted residential. Zoning began in 1973 here. That's been zoned that way forever. Connectivity. I could get every cop, every emergency service vehicle, every U.S. Forest Service guy fighting a fire to show up, but they're busy working. So they don't get a chance to show up here and go, connectivity, that's why it's in the ordinance. That's why, you know, planning and zoning, I can tell you, I don't always agree with these guys, but, you know, they got a rule book they're supposed to rule by that I try to play by because that's the level playing field, and it says connect. Because the cops want connect, the fire wants connect, everybody wants connect. It's not what I want. It's not what those folks want. It's what's for the greater good, for the greater amount of people in Kootenai County. And I hear a lot of vitriol. Boy, you got some anger. I'm sorry, gotta get it this way. A couple of these speakers had some serious, and that's back to, I don't wish cancer on anybody, but it sure made me a lot smarter on not to get wound up about stuff. So you got a tough decision, but protect and serve means what is for the greater good, for the greatest amount of the citizens of Kootenai County. And common sense, boy, you're gonna have to wiggle to try to get through there and make that faster. I mean, anybody that's in a hurry is gonna stick on the main drag using the basic rules that Dobler points out. I mean, not to insult the village idiot, but I don't think the village idiot would try to drive through there because you're not gonna get any faster. And by the way, they're all heading to Athol the other direction. They're not heading up there. And if they are heading up there, and my guys can't even drive through. The classic thing here is this makes it so they can shoot out quick. It's a classic paradox. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. All right, last call before we go to rebuttal. Anybody else on Zoom, in person? All right. Would you like time for rebuttal? No?
Let me just say that, no, I don't have any rebuttal.
Okay. Ms. Kruger, anything? Nope. All right, last chance.
Led's over there.
Oh, Vlad, go ahead.
He almost hung himself there.
Commissioners, good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I am the planner assigned to this case. I'd like to state into the record that I have received several phone calls from the concerned citizens who reside in Bayview with a request that I make a contact with the Highway District to inquire whether they would submit additional comments or they would clarify the latest proposal that they submitted on June 9th of this year with regard to one-way street south of the project site. I have explained to those individuals that while I can make a phone call, I can't dictate or influence them to provide any additional information than they already have. We are bound by our regulations. They are a separate entity. The Highway District Engineer answers to his own Board of Commissioners. And so we have to oblige by what are the regulations in our Land Use and Development Code, and we have to accept the conditions or the comments that are submitted by jurisdictional agencies. And in many cases throughout the years, we have to sift through those comments, and in some instances, we do have to eliminate those comments that perhaps are not addressing impacts or mitigating impacts. But for the most part, when it comes to highway districts, I would have to say it's very rare, almost never the case that we remove any of their requirements or we enforce something different than they would submit in their letter that's an official letter from signed by the district engineer on behalf of their board. So we have very little wiggle room to deviate from what the agency would say. And I'm not taking a position for or against, I'm merely stating the facts that we just don't have the luxury to deviate from what those agencies, specifically the Highway District, may impose or may not impose. I know that in their original letter, they clearly stated that they wanted this secondary access point for better circulation as well as for emergency services. They stated that it would be for the betterment of that area if the applicant were to provide secondary access. So with that, if you have any questions, I can address them, but otherwise just wanted to make it very clear on how we proceed in our regard.
Madam Chair, I would just tag on to that part of the issue here is that Lakes has final authority on signing the plat. So if they refuse to sign the plat, it's effectively a denial.
And one other point related to that is that there was testimony that brought up that suggested the council for Lakes Highway District was misinterpreting the law. You know, I'm not going to second guess Ms. Weeks' opinion. That's between her and the district. And regardless of what the law says or doesn't say, the district has the right to say, no, we're not going to put a gate across their road.
And that's their position.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have two more people wanting to speak now, so, hang on a second. Yes, for or against?
Against.
Okay, come on up. Do you have your purple sheet? Did you pass?
I did.
Okay, and then, did you give up your time?
No.
Okay. All right, what is your name?
My name is Robin Vieira.
Okay.
And I live on the corner of Spruce and Fifth. And all I would like to do was give you a 600 signature petition. And what this is that it's just saying that we want to say no to the one-way. So if I can give this to you.
Yes.
That'll be entered as B1003.
Thank you.
I think that's going to be duplicative of the exhibit entered in a prior hearing. So you may want to make it like B 3003, you know, 3001, 3002, 3003.
Sure.
Okay.
Do that. Let's do B 3003.
Okay. And Rick?
In the past one.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the time and your patience. I'm here on behalf of Gary and Emma Schmidt. I'm an attorney with Ramsden Marfis here in Coeur d'Alene. Just want to briefly address a couple of points. First of all, I've known Gary as a personal matter. I've known Gary for a few years. And in terms of Gary as a person and Gary as a professional doing things the right way, it's been mentioned, it's been discussed numerous times, and I think everyone is, there's a strong sentiment in terms of supporting the development itself, and I think a large part of it speaks to Gary and his qualities as a person. That, I'm certain, is not lost on the board. There's a couple of points that I think are important from a legal perspective to highlight. One of them, Mr. Finkel addressed it, and I believe Mr. Callahan spoke to the point as well, is just the historical deference that is paid by the board to decisions and determinations by highway districts as it pertains to issues involving the highways. I would warn against, and respectfully warn against, or caution against, I think is a better way of phrasing it, in terms of deviating from that at this point, because as Mr. Callahan raised, doing so would effectively entail a denial of the application, and that's would be a shame. The second point is in terms of the evidence that was actually presented today by way of Mr. Dobler and the points he raised in terms of the connectivity and whatnot. It's, with all due respect to the public's comments in that regard, I think it's extremely important for this board to maintain in its considerations the fact that objective numerical data was presented in speaking to this very issue. In opposition to that, you heard conjecture, you heard anecdotal discussions about various issues, various personal experiences on the road, and those are important. But from an evidentiary perspective, it's important to focus on the data that's actually presented and what that entails in terms of what the ramifications of the development would be, and of course the imposition of the one-way or the gate. Another thing to bear in mind too, and I apologize, I can't recall if it was Mr. Callahan or if it was Mr. Finkel who raised the issue, is one of the points that was raised by Lakes Highway District is the notion that one of the beneficiary aspects of approval is the fact that you do increase access to the area for emergency services and first responders. The fact of the matter is this dichotomy of a gate versus one way, that could be a preclusive issue that effectively takes the entire thing off the table and eliminates that access. And that is unquestionably detrimental to the people of the area. I think that's an important point to bear in consideration as you contemplate this. Thank you for your time.
All right, anyone else? Okay, anyone else on Zoom? Anyone else? All right, no more rebuttal. And so I would ask to end public testimony, then we can discuss if we want to deliberate tonight or put it as a date certain.
I move that we end public testimony on MSP 22-0004 Lakestone Estates.
What?
End public testimony.
Okay, that's all. I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Matari.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. Would the board prefer to deliberate on August 17th or tonight?
17th for me.
August 17th.
Okay. So, Pat, do we need a motion or we'll just?
Yeah, I would, make a motion to schedule deliberations on this matter for August 17th at 9 a.m.
I move that we schedule our deliberations for August 17th for MSP 22-0004 Lakestone Estates.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Commissioner Matari.
Aye.
Chair Duncan.
Aye. Okay, deliberations will happen on August 17th. I appreciate everybody's participation. Thank you. It is 8:35, meeting adjourned.
You can take